What's going on, everybody? Anthony Cervino here with the RotoWire Fantasy Football YouTube channel with my way too early top 10 fantasy football quarterback rankings for 2025. Let's get right into it. Baker Mayfield is my quarterback 10. Without Liam Cohen, I would have drastically downgraded Baker Mayfield. However, now that we know Liam Cohen is retained for 2025, I'm all in on Baker Mayfield. We've seen Baker Mayfield now in Tampa Bay with a career resurgence back-to-back years as a QB 17 or better in fantasy points per game. But this past season under Cohen, Baker Mayfield lit it up. QB 4 in fantasy points per game. QB 4 overall. Career best 8 yards per attempt, career best 71.8 completion percentage, 43 passing touchdowns, and 4,685 yards. Baker Mayfield was simply outstanding across the board when it comes to yards passing. He was third in that category. When it comes to those passing touchdowns, he was second in that category. Seventh in red zone attempts, seventh or fifth in passing attempts overall, and 12th in deep ball attempts. But what is absolutely outstanding, when Baker Mayfield is in the money zone, he's number one. He was a number one quarterback in red zone completion rate, 73.3%. He was also the number 2 best quarterback when it comes to pressured completion rate, completing 69.6% of his passes. We know that Mike Evans is coming back. We've seen Jalen McMillan ascended to a thing down the stretch. So even if Chris Godwin does not return, there's enough juice in this Tampa Bay offense for Baker Mayfield to once again thrive in fantasy football. Next up, Jordan Love. And Jordan Love could be somebody I could see falling back out of my top 10 because, well, 2 years ago, 2023, we know Jordan Love was outstanding, quarterback 5 in points per game, but this year took a drastic step back. Quarterback 9 in that category, only 15.7 fantasy points per game, and the QB 19 overall. Well, what changed? I don't know if LaFleur fully trusts Jordan Love. We saw down the stretch, Jordan Love wasn't throwing a lot. Why? Because if he's forced to throw a lot and take on that gunslinger mentality, he makes mistakes. He throws interceptions. When they ground and pound with Jacobs and play outstanding defense, they win more games, and it protects Love. We could see LaFleur take the wheels off of Love again in 2025. It wouldn't shock me, but what I do think needs to happen, I do think Green Bay needs to go out and get a bona fide number 1 wide receiver. This is not going to be the most popular take in the world. I don't think they have one. Jayden Reed's a fun weapon, might be their best wide receiver, but he's not an alpha. Christian Watson is the closest thing they have, and we know there's injury concerns there. They got Wicks, they got Dubs, but they don't really have that dude. If Green Bay goes out and finds one, then I think Jordan Love can once again thrive as a fantasy passer. If not, then I could see myself downgrading Love outside of my top 10, possibly outside of my top 12. Next up, Brock Purdey, folks. Brock Purdy is another one. Coming off of a QB 6 year in 2023, not too bad this season. QB 9 of fantasy points per game, which is pretty impressive, all things considered. All the injuries to that offense. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel looked like a shell of himself. Of course, CMC only playing a handful of games, and when he was active, he was still banged up, did not look like himself. The offensive line in shambles, the defense in shambles, not being able to create those turnovers to give Brock Purdy those additional opportunities. But I'm going to go in on Brock Purdy this year as my quarterback 8 because San Francisco, right, they're going to get healthier again. CMC is going to be back. We believe healthy. Brandon Ayuk's going to be back. He's going to be healthy. Ricky Pearsall looks like a nice addition to this offense. And, of course, the emergence of Juwan Jennings. Deebo Samuel could be the odd man out, but that's okay because, like I said, they have Jennings and Pearsall. Let's not forget George Kittle, who's coming off one of the best years of his career, one of the more consistent years of his career. He seems to be the locked-in go-to guy for Brock Purdy. And of course, I know Purdy needs a lot of help, and he's a system guy, but guess what? He's still in that system with Kyle Shanahan. I'm more than happy to roll the dice on Brock Purdy, number 9 in red zone attempts. We know this Shanahan offense, they are going to live in the red area. And Brock Purdy, he is one of the more accurate passers in the league. Number 3 quarterback when it comes to pressured completion rate, number 8 when it comes to deep ball completion rate, and number 10 when it comes to red zone completion rate this season. Again, in a year where his weapons were non-existent. Let's go to my next quarterback. This might shock people, but it shouldn't. Bo Nix, his rookie year, absolutely fantastic under Sean Payton. Quarterback 8 in fantasy points per game. Quarterback 8 overall. 30 passing touchdowns. 473 running yards. 4 rushing touchdowns. 3,919 passing yards. Did not miss a game. What makes this impressive, and I get he was a rookie. That's impressive. But what makes it that much more impressive, you see the weapons that he had to work with, or lack thereof. The running back room, Javonte Williams, McLaughlin, Estime, not great. The wide receivers outside of Cortland Sutton, Vele, we saw Mims take a little bit of a step up. Tight end rooms in shambles. Bo Nix could be a player with so much untapped potential in this Sean Payton offense, to where if Denver goes out and finds a wide receiver, and I don't know who that is, maybe they go out and try to get a veteran like Hopkins or Diggs. Maybe they go out and say, hey, we're going to throw the checkbook at T. Higgins. I don't know what they're going to do. I do foresee Denver making noise when it comes to offensive skill players, and that's only going to help Bo Nix. I am all in on Bo Nix this season because we already know what he can do, but not the best weapons in the world. So imagine putting some outstanding weapons around him. I think the best of Bo Nix has yet to come. Next up, Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes this year, quarterback 12 in points per game, quarterback 11 overall. Another subpar year for Patrick Mahomes, yet the Chiefs, all they do is win. That doesn't mean that is going to correlate to fantasy football success for Mahomes. 27 passing touchdowns, matches what he did last season. 2 rushing scores, which is 2 more than he had in 2023. We know what Patrick Mahomes is right now. He's a very good fantasy quarterback. I just don't know if he is the elite fantasy quarterback that he was years ago. And he doesn't have to be, as long as the Chiefs continue to win. Now, can I see an ascension from Mahomes this upcoming year? Of course. Rashee Rice is coming back. Worthy's going to be entering year 2. I know Kelsey's getting up there in age, but we saw Noah Gray. He could become a thing. And they're going to go find a veteran number 3 receiver, whether they retain Hopkins or Marquise Brown, which I think is more logical to keep Marquise Brown. There's enough on this Kansas City offense to continue to take Patrick Mahomes as a middling quarterback one, because he's safe. He's going to give you some pretty good games. Of course, there's going to be some duds in there. But again, if you want consistency, if you want steady, Patrick Mahomes is one of your best bets. Next up, Jalen Hurts, folks. Jalen Hurts. He is my quarterback 5. There's a lot of good quarterbacks I have yet to rank ahead of him. And Jalen Hurts this year, quarterback 6 in points per game, quarterback 6 overall, only 20 passing touchdowns, 3 less than last season, 15 rushing scores, which is right on par for Jalen Hurts. But when it comes to throwing, he took a step back. Still played in 17 games in 2023, threw for 3,858 yards. This season, 3,162. Why? Well, almost 120 fewer attempts. Why? Saquon Barkley. And folks, Saquon Barkley is going to be back next year. He's not going anywhere. And as long as Saquon Barkley is healthy in this offense, the Philadelphia Eagles offense will run through Saquon Barkley. And that does hurt Jalen Hurts in fantasy football. Yes, Hurts is going to still have that rushing floor and that rushing upside, but he doesn't bring the same passing ceiling to the table. If you don't believe me, go ask A.J. Brown, go look at his numbers. So I'm fine taking Hurts inside my top 5 or top 6, but I can't rank him any higher because Saquon Barkley is that electric and he is that damning to the upside and ceiling of Jalen Hurts. My quarterback 4, Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, simply outstanding. When Joe Burrow is healthy, you can make the case he's the best quarterback in the NFL, not named Patrick Mahomes. Quarterback 3 in points per game, quarterback 5 overall. And what do we know about Burrow? Well, he doesn't bring much of a rushing floor. He's just a pure quarterback. And he does it really well. He was a number 1 quarterback in passing attempts, red zone attempts, number 2 in team pass plays per game, 2nd in rushing yards, number 2 in passing touchdowns with 43, efficiency and accuracy metrics across the board. Now, they got Chase. I get it. T. Higgins is probably not going to be back. And that's going to hurt Joe Burrow. But I think Cincinnati is going to replenish that wide receiver 2 position. Plenty of good wide receivers coming out of the NFL draft. Maybe they bring in a veteran, but I certainly think they will address that wide receiver 2 spot to give Burrow that extra weapon. But again, even if they don't, Joe Burrow is going to find a way to get it done. They have Gesicki, pretty good tight end room. They have Chase Brown, who looks like the next big thing when it comes to pass catching, versatile running backs of the backfield. How much damage did he do to enemy defenses with his versatile skill set? So there's enough here for Joe Burrow. My biggest knock on Burrow is the health concerns. But as long as Joe Burrow stays healthy like he did this year, I think the ceiling is absolutely positively through the roof. I'm all in on drafting Burrow as a top 4 fantasy quarterback. Number 3, Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels in his rookie campaign, fantastic quarterback, 5 in points per game, quarterback 3 overall. Got it done every which way. 4,135 passing yards, 69% completion percentage. Who was he throwing to outside of Terry McLaurin? Zach Ertz, bunch of dudes. It didn't matter. Jayden Daniels got the job done. 978 rushing yards, 6 rushing scores, 29 passing touchdowns. This rookie, he's making a case to entrench himself as a top 5 quarterback, not only in fantasy, but in the NFL. It's all there. He's poised, he's composed, he's productive. Jayden Daniels is the all-around do-it-all guy, and he obviously managed to stay healthy. I know a little bit banged up in the second half of the year, but still, this guy was productive game in and game out. Now, Philly did give him fits at home. So did Pittsburgh. Those elite defenses, they're going to give a lot of quarterback fits. Go ask Lamar Jackson. But every other game, it's going to be really hard to slow down Jayden Daniels. And I fully believe that this offseason, Washington goes and gets Jayden Daniels some help. Outside of Terry McLaurin, they need help. Ertz, the veteran. Eckler's a longtime veteran. They got Zacchaeus. Dammy Brown looks like he could be a thing, but there's some injury concerns there. They need wide receiver help. Washington has that taste of winning. There's that taste of the playoffs. They want to keep it going. The way they keep it going is going to get Jayden Daniels help at the wide receiver position. If that happens, we could be talking about Jayden Daniels as the number 1 overall fantasy quarterback next year. He was 5th in red zone attempts last season. He was number 1 in red zone carries. Jayden Daniels has a nose for points, which means there's going to be a lot of fantasy points scored if you have him as your quarterback. Number 2, Josh Allen. Of course, Josh Allen gets it done. Number 2 in points per game, number 2 overall. Even when you take away Stephon Diggs, and we don't love the weapons in Buffalo, Josh Allen finds a way. threw for 4,130 yards, 597 rushing yards, 14 rushing scores, 30 passing scores. This is the Josh Allen stat line. No matter who he's throwing to, this dude finds a way to get it done and produce not only for Buffalo, but for our fantasy football teams. He was the number one quarterback in deep ball attempts, throwing to guys like Shakir and Keon Coleman, and once in a while when he was on the field, Amari Cooper. He was also number 12 in red zone attempts. Well, there could have been more, but usually when they're in the red, he's trying to rush it in on that power running play that they love to run so well with Josh Allen. I don't see a world where, barring injury, Josh Allen doesn't finish as a top 3 quarterback in fantasy football year in and year out. I think he's interchangeable with guys like Jayden Daniels. I'm all in on Josh Allen. If you want safe, if you want ceiling, if you want upside, Josh Allen is probably your best bet, because year in and year out, as we know, if we go back to the past few seasons from 2020 to 2024, Josh Allen never finished outside of the top 3 in fantasy points per game, and that includes 3 seasons as the quarterback 1 overall. Finally, Lamar Jackson, he's my quarterback 1. He takes over that QB1 spot from Josh Allen. Now, in 2 years in the Todd Monken offense, we are seeing the best version of Lamar Jackson as a thrower. Back-to-back years at least 24 passing touchdowns and at least 3,600 yards. Back-to-back years as a quarterback 3 or better in points per game. But this past season, we saw a special, and I know it's because of Derrick Henry. But that only helps us from a fantasy football perspective. Lamar, the quarterback 1, 4,600 passing yards. That's a career best by far. 8.8 yards per attempt. Career best by far. 67.3% completion rate. Career best. 45 passing touchdowns. Career best by far. He also ran the ball for just over 1,000 yards and 4 rushing scores. Now, I get it. He's not going to run for as many touchdowns as Hurts or Josh Allen. He doesn't need to, because he can hand the ball off to Derrick Henry. He can also throw the football, a couple of nice tight ends, a couple of nice red zone weapons at the wide receiver position, like Bateman, who had a breakout year. But across the board, Lamar has shown us this season that now that he has a top-end running back like Derrick Henry, the passing lanes open like the Red Sea. We saw Bateman have a career year, and despite a bad start to the year and a bad end, Mark Andrews was outstanding when it comes to being a perennial red zone threat that he normally is. We saw Likely get involved. We know Zay Flowers is a thing. So as long as Derrick Henry remains on the Baltimore Ravens, and I see Lamar Jackson flourishing as the number 1 overall fantasy football player,